Good morning on the West Coast and good afternoon on the East Coast. I'm John Yarrington, CEO of the Performance-Driven Marketing Institute, a 501c6 not-for-profit trade association dedicated to protecting, promoting, and advancing the direct-to-consumer and direct response advertising industries. And on behalf of the entire PDMI team, it's my pleasure to welcome you to yet another fun-filled and exciting episode of the PDMI Take 20. As a reminder, the PDMI Take 20 is a quick-hitting, roundtable discussion led by industry experts on trending topics, all in 20 minutes or less. Today we'll be taking a look at best practices when implementing campaigns. However, before we get started, please allow me to do a little housekeeping. If you'd like to ask questions, and we encourage you to do so, please use the questions tab located in your control panel on the right-hand side of your computer screen. Please note, you're welcome to ask questions throughout today's conversation. However, we will be holding all answers to the end of today's discussion. Alrighty, folks. With that said, it's my pleasure to introduce you today to today's moderator. He's best known for being the mayor of Handsome Town, the fearless Chris Foster. Chris is the vice president of new business. Chris is the vice president of new business at Modern Postcard, a direct marketing agency located in Carlsbad, California. In addition to his day job, Chris teaches brand strategies at UCSD Extension courses, and he's the chairperson at PDMI's Brand Response Council. As always, Chris, it's a pleasure to have you here with us today, and thank you. Please do your thing and take it away.
Thanks so much, John. That is a fantastic introduction. I'm so glad it's being recorded so I can play it back to my wife. Anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for being here, and thank you for listening in to our Take 20. What we wanted to do in this episode is kind of take some of our industry experts and think of it like you're having a cocktail at an hour in a business conference, and you're able to ask them some questions, right? Some real kind of on the ground, what the team is seeing every day in the trenches scenarios, so that you can learn from what they see all the time, working with the various clients and the experiences that they have. And so we wanted to kind of go around the table and ask some folks some questions. And Heather, I think I'm going to start with you. My question for you is, in all the stuff that you've seen, what is the newest social media tactic that has surprised you?
Well, I would say, the emergence, not so much the emergence, but just how much people are flocking to TikTok and at not just that younger generation, but you're starting to see people like, I'm a Gen Xer, you're starting to see more and more millennials and even Gen Xers starting to flock there and create content. And you're seeing from an advertising perspective, the beta for the self-serve advertising platform within TikTok open up a little more. And so when you think about where we're starting to see questions in pitches, as well as considerations in some of the media planning that we're doing, TikTok is something that not all brands are relevant for just yet, but we're getting a lot of questions in that new biz phase, and we're also getting a lot of interest in doing more research within that media planning phase to explore if the TikTok perspective, the TikTok space is something that's really relevant for them. So I would say the conversations around TikTok and whether or not it's relevant is something that has surprised me. And that certainly opens up a whole world of different tactics and approaches you can take to connecting with consumers on that platform. But really what we have seen more aggressively in the past year or so is more of that Facebook and specifically Instagram dominance, and really using Instagram in particular to go throughout the funnel, because it's not just about awareness and consideration. A couple of years ago, they did introduce the shopping ads and everything else, and you can essentially buy something with one click on Instagram. So sure. That is that's giving you a peek into some of the media planning and things that we're doing, but more so showing you just sort of over the past couple of years how much that Instagram audience at all ages is becoming really relevant throughout the entire funnel.
It's so interesting. So there are 2 points that I want to follow up with you on. I love that idea of Instagram being a funnel solution, not just an awareness solution. One of the things we do know about Instagram is that there's a whole cadre of influencers on Instagram. Now, do you think that with the conversations you've had about TikTok, do you think that there will be an emergence of a community of TikTok influencers?
There already are.
Okay.
There already are, and I think it's going to be about seeing over the next year, I would say, how those influencers, how engagement with those influencers works. We have somebody at Red Door who heads up all of our earned media department. He's on my team. He himself is an influencer. He has over 100,000 subscribers to his YouTube channel. He has over 100,000 followers to his TikTok channel. And like seeing how brands are starting to work with him in his own side business, or seeing how they're engaging with him, has been interesting. And that's part of the reason why I like working with him. One, because he has this broad experience in the background, but also he's sort of our insight into how influencer programs are working, because he is an influencer, but more important, influencer. But we have brands coming to us specifically to ask questions and possibly work with us because for an influencer only program and stuff. So I would say that those conversations are already happening. They're already there. And you need to have somebody who's very savvy, who can understand how to navigate and build those programs up, or those opportunities for that audience up.
That's wonderful. That's true, because if you don't, then someone else will. Someone else who has the acumen to do that will pick that up. Sean, I'm going to move over to you if you don't mind. One of the things that have come up now, and of course, if you're not testing, you're not trying. I totally understand that. All marketers understand that. But for you, what are 2 to 3 different tests that you see you're running that you're really curious about, and do you think that these tests give insight into future trends?
Yeah, it's a good question. Couple things that we're doing right now, if you think about what's going on in the video CTV space, you have the adoption rates that are around 70-75% of what would be national household audiences. I'll give you some numbers. So in general, CTV can penetrate 80 million homes, 80 to 84 million homes, and that's on a Nielsen panel of about 120 million homes. So CTV is sort of at scale at this point. And so I think what advertisers are doing, or what we're testing, is whether or not, CTV alone from a reach standpoint can really sort of drive results at a local level even. Can I take LA, for instance, with a niched product and only run Hulu, Peacock, right? Can I supplement what I normally would do in terms of broadcast network in a local market and just run CTV on a targeted campaign? I think that's going to be sort of interesting. COVID has sort of pulled forward, right, a lot of the numbers. You saw Roku Trade Desk report over the last 2 weeks. I think Roku's up to 53 million subs now for Roku devices. So this just general idea of the CTV trend, I think, is going to be, something to watch. Amazon now has the exclusive rights for Thursday Night Football starting in the 2022 season. You will be able to get if your local team is playing Thursday, don't worry, you'll be able to see them. But the national game, which was typically on NFL Network and Fox, is no longer there. So what happens? I think it's just going to be kind of an interest. That would be another test relative to sports. So.
No, I like that idea, and I think that what's interesting is the layering of channels, right? So how you layer in marketing channels on top of CTV and testing which, like you said, does it work alone or does it work in tandem with some of these other marketing approaches?
Yeah.
So I guess, Shira, I'll go to you. So one question that we have, right, everyone is kind of looking for good examples, right? Examples they want to follow and examples they want to avoid, right? So if you could kind of tell us which brands are really doing it right, which ones do you see, they really understand how to implement these campaigns and they've got some best practices that they know.
Great, so I hope you can hear me well, because I don't know, I think the connection is a bit low on my side, but a great example, I think it's in fact Planet Fitness, the United We Move campaign. When the stay-at-home started, Planet Fitness want to keep engaged people, to make them, feel good at home. So they, with their help, with their agency, Barkley, they created the United We Move campaign in just 2 days. So great adaptability, pretty amazing. And what they did, their aim was to really push people to work out at home, right, and stay connected. And they offered kind of, I think it was a 20-minute free fitness class online on regarding to a question on social. So it was on YouTube and Facebook Live, and people continue to engage. So it was of the few retailer during the pandemic that saw an increase in engagement, which is absolutely outstanding, I believe. Yeah.
Well, what I like about that, I love that example where they're using the live feeds from YouTube and Facebook, and you wonder too if that becomes an emerging type of channel where you know, a live event or a live moment that a brand can put on play to go out to their followers. That might be something that folks explore with a little bit more.
Of course, it's you know, it's strengthening of a brand. People feel more connected with the brand, especially, you know, they stayed at home, so they didn't intend to go to gym because they could not go to gym. So this is an amazing way to stay connected with a brand. Definitely, I think live event, it's one of the best way to keep engagement up.
You know what I'm wondering too, you had just mentioned, Sean, about Amazon having the exclusive nights to Thursday Night Football. The one thing that Thursday Night Football has that other programs don't is that it's live and you don't know what's going to happen, right? If you miss it, you're going to hear about it. So recording a game and watching it later is a challenge. And then, Shira, you touched on the live events too. Even though we're going to be moving back into some social gatherings, I think the live event, especially for broadcast, especially for media, especially for opportunities to market, is still going to be around and be more important than ever. You guys have thoughts on that?
Yep, I mean, I absolutely agree with that. I think the live event sort of galvanizes us. Water cooler talk. Did you see that or this? I think how the consumer consumes the live event, I think the device, right, or the format is maybe what changes. I think there is some, you know, general, you know, curiosity at whether or not the Academy and Grammys sort of ratings number is really a mismeasurement relative to all the ways people are consuming. Is it just too fractured for Nielsen to roll everything up into a C3, you know, for instance? But this live idea, Chris, is what, if you think about it, Hulu launched a campaign 2 years ago, which was Hulu Live. Remember that? And so Roku is moving into live. And if you think about what is keeping people connected to the cord, quote unquote, it's your local news, that is a live program, your local sports, that is a live program. And then you have sort of, you know, you trickle in here some tent poles, and I think live is going to always be there in terms of engagement. I think that the format and channel that people consume over the next 3 years will be, you know.
That's interesting. It actually gets back to what Heather first mentioned about TikTok, because in the moment of filming, it's a live event, right? Of course, you can edit it and do whatever you want, and people watch it later. So I guess, you know, one thing about that, and you had mentioned TikTok earlier, Heather, I don't want to go too far into it yet, but do you see best practices in that, or best practices yet to be determined and we're still figuring it out?
There are best practices and they're continuously evolving. And I would say it's all about how, not just with TikTok, really with any social platform. And I'm really thinking of like Instagram, and as they're, you know, updating things and adding like, you know, in the stories feature, like an update button as to new features that they want you to check out and everything as a consumer. Those things are always evolving and changing and stuff. And I think that what's today is a best practice can be very different, and it's all about how people use how people are using and engaging with it, and then the platform looks at that data and they see how people are engaging and using with it, and they feed it into their product development, and if they talk about it, and then marketers like us think about, okay, well, how can we retool this? What is the new best practice of how we use this platform and engage with it and everything? So there are best practices, and they're continuously evolving very rapidly, I would say.
Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to go around the horn then. Heather, what do you see upcoming is going to be one of the best practices that brands should follow?
It's one that I've been saying for quite a while, you need to be paying attention to the data and letting that feed your ideation, the past data, as well as competitive data, and you have access to that through all these different platforms, whether it's Google Web Trends, social listening, any kind of like SimilarWeb or SEMrush. There's all this data of how brands and consumers are interacting and engaging from a digital perspective, and you need to be taking those insights and allowing it to inform your strategy. And so that's going to be key and critical to helping you understand, okay, maybe I was focused on this and this in this past media plan, but holy crap, CTV rates have doubled, or spend on CTV has doubled. We need to start playing in that, or we should have been already playing in that. We need to start engaging with it and everything. So it's paying attention to everything that's happening with your competitors, and you have access to all that data and allowing it to inform you as to what you need to keep and what you need to go forward and maybe tread new water with.
Fantastic. So turning data into information to fuel decisions on your next campaign.
And it needs to be continuous. It can't just be, here and there. You need to actually be looking at it regularly, like monthly.
Monthly, awesome. Okay, Shira, what's your best practice?
I would like to add to just what Ed said. I totally agree about data. Definitely insights, test and learn. But I would also suggest to take it one more step. Predict possible outcome, right? Think about scenarios, things that can happen, so you can adapt and really be. I think I can give you a great example. We post regularly on our website what's called impact analysis. What are those? We look at a major event on TV and compare several brands that advertise on that show and see which brands drove the most engagement. The latest impact analysis we've done was during the Super Bowl. There were 5 brands during the Super Bowl. One of them was Robinhood and Vroom, but those are 2 major I want to talk about. Robinhood, which with a revenue, I think, of around 700 millions, drove the least engagement. Why I'm saying that? Because they didn't adapt. A week before the Super Bowl, they stopped. They didn't allow people to buy stocks, as you remember, on AMC and GameStop. Now their engagement was 4 times less than Vroom, which has a much less revenue. But the Vroom ad was, fantastic. It was funny. They created an ad that looked at a car dealership as torture chamber. It was really, really funny. But the advertisement of, Robinhood was, status quo, feel-good ad. Instead of addressing the elephant in the room, they didn't really create an ad to bring re-engagement back. So they didn't adapt. And what we talked just now, it's so important to be kind of flexible and predict the outcome based on data. So, and they had the data. They knew 1 week before what happened, so they could at the last minute, like Applied Fitness, they did that in 2 days. So anyway, this is kind of.
That's great. Don, what do you see? What is going to be the best practices that you see moving ahead? Give us a good nugget.
Yeah, I think Heather, nailed it. I think a data-driven approach, right? We're sort of outcomes-based at Havas Edge. Our clients are performance-driven, so we have to deliver a ROAS number. I think the question is having, in terms of best practices, making sure clients have a reasonable expectation for the different jobs, the different pieces of media are contributing to. I would not expect, a display, for instance, right, to perform like a Facebook, right, programmatic, or like a Oscars. And I think sometimes what we do is we step back as growth managers and look at sort of the portfolio and have to decide, okay, how do I optimize my search, my paid social, my linear, my CTV, and the metrics are all different, and the attribution windows are all different. And so you've got to have a plan, right, from a measurement. Shira, you have to have a measurement plan to dedupe, to allocate to run your internal, MMM model. I think sometimes we get there and we're almost surprised at the disparate, metrics. I think you just have to, right, have a plan, set up your measurement map, and I think that would be ultimately a best practice.
I love that, Sean, because one of the things that we talk about a lot when it comes to attribution and the like is that you don't ask a marketing channel to do a job it's not designed to do, right? Ask the marketing channel to do its job. That's all, right? If its only job is to drive website traffic, that's it. Don't ask it to generate revenue. Just ask it to drive website traffic. And then ask the website to generate the conversion and the revenue and the like. So I love that approach because that way, if a brand understands that each channel has a very specific job and you're focusing on the metric of that job, suddenly the metrics seem to make more sense, right? You're not comparing one to the other in ways that they shouldn't.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah.
Johnny, we're at about 11:23. So what kind of questions do we have from the audience coming through?
We've got a couple of great ones that have come through, and I'd love to share them with you guys right now. First one goes as, we all know influencers can be a very powerful tool for social media, hence their large followings. However, how do influencers translate into the television and radio world?
Oh, that's
right, Tucson, you got it.
No, I mean, that's a good question because you are already seeing influencers start to be positioned and come into play, not only on TV shows or as commentators on an array of different news outlets and stuff, but you're also seeing them come into play in advertising. And one of the things that I'm constantly having to say to clients when they come to us and they want an influencer program is they're always thinking they want these influencers with massive followings and stuff. And it's like, that may not be the right influencer for you, depending on your goals and objectives. We may be looking at an influencer who has a smaller but very niche and well-connected audience, and there are ways for us to determine whether or not they're well-connected and whether or not their audience actually holds everything they say to be, sacred and will buy the product if they promote it and stuff. So we need to take a nice balance and look at all these influencers in different ways. And so there may be the influencers that have a lot of followings that we recommend to clients that you're starting to see in commercials and on TV and stuff. But a lot of times we're having the conversation about, we really want the micro or the niche influencer for you because they're going to actually have an impact on your business.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great distinction. One of the things I teach in my classes, you don't have to be a big brand to be a great brand. Right. Like an influencer, you don't have to have a huge following to have a great following. I love that. All right, Johnny, what's another question? Oh,
yeah,
sorry,
absolutely.
Shira, go for it.
No, just one little thing. I think it's also important to measure the ROI of these influencers because it's different from TV. Those that are successful on TV, right? As I mentioned, there's influencer for TV, there's influencer for radio. Not always they're the same, right? So sometimes even there are those channels. You need to try also to measure this ROI. There's different kind of ways, but it's something that needs to be, we talk about adaptability and campaign, right? So it should be part of the plan as well. So once you have a set of influencer, come up with a way to measure their ROI by channels.
Yeah, I love that.
All right, here's another question for the group. There are so many media options in today's marketing world, digital, social, TV, CTV. When launching a campaign, how does a campaign manager best measure the success of their new media they're using?
I can start. It's like test and learn. You put a little bit there, and then you grow from the beginning. So try different channels, see what's work, add upon a new one, and little by little increase the spend and really monitor the attribution and the impact of the campaign. But one thing that is very important for me to say, that it's better to invest in 2-3 channel substantial amount of money than take the same amount of budget and then disperse it in so many channels, because you will never get right to statistical significance that you really need to get an accurate read.
Wonderful. That's great advice, Shira.
All right, I think we got time for one more question. So let me throw this out there. And by the way, great job on the answer, Shira. Here we go. Do you have recommendations on which media services a small tier company with a media budget of under 5 million should implement to launch their campaign?
John, you want to take that?
The question was recommendation on a small to medium tier company. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Let me reread it. So, do you have recommendations on which media services a small tier company with a media budget of under 5 million should implement to best launch their campaign?
Yeah, I think the target is everything, and sort of there's a lot of questions I want to ask there, right? The target, how competitive, how busy is the competitive? I'll just give you some general rules. If my target is 50 plus, okay, I may lean a little bit heavier on linear TV with efficient sort of CPMs, okay? If my target is 18 to 49, got to get paid social right and search right. I mean, those are sort of you know what I mean? It's Facebook and Google and everybody else, right, in that arena. And so those would be some general ideas. But I think a good starting point is to probably shore up your search and paid social with that type of budget, and then depending on the target, kind of move up the reach.
Cool, thanks, Sean.
Also interesting is that I appreciate that, Sean, because you brought an insight into something that affects everyone, and that's just age and life stage, right? The life stage of the consumer, whether we like it or not, is still a predominant driver of the media consumption. And so old folks like myself are on Facebook, young folks like Heather are on Instagram, and it's the idea that even as an age, we're starting to gravitate, right? So I love that answer, Sean. You were like, well, if they're over 50, linear TV is awesome because they're still watching it.
Yeah. What's the talk of the upfronts, right, are next week, broadcast upfronts, the 18th, 19th, they sort of start, and the talk of the upfronts is that the major networks are not going to guarantee audience demographics that are not broad. They do not want to guarantee 25 to 54. They don't want to guarantee 18 to 49 anymore. They want to guarantee 18 plus, 25 plus, and that's because 50% of the viewers, right, are 50 plus.
Yeah.
And what we experienced this year in scatter in terms of this quarter is that scatter pricing was through the roof because there was audience deficiency against the lower sort of cohort. So something to watch. That's sort of going to be a big trend for this upcoming year.
We could talk all day, Johnny, but I think we got to wrap it up. It's 11:30.
We got to wrap it, but it was a great conversation. Let me come in here real quickly, put the close on this. So Shira, Heather, Sean, Chris, awesome conversation today. It just flew by. It was amazing how 20 minutes just bam, right? So thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom, experience, and expertise with us. Folks at home, I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I personally did. Before we close out, I'd like to take a moment to invite each and every one of you to join us for our next episode of the PDMI Take 20, which is hosted May 26th at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking data privacy in 2021. To see the full schedule of PDMI Take 20 sessions, visit our website at thepdmi.com/take-20. That's thepdmi.com/take-20. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us today, and all the best.